Hello. I've been reading today Psalm 23, which is a very familiar psalm to most of us. But there's been a couple of things that have struck me afresh, and so I thought I'd share some of that with you and also invite you to reflect afresh on this psalm. And it might be that as I talk that every now and again you press pause and just reflect for yourself about what is it that God is saying to me today through this psalm. I'm just going to read it to you. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in right paths for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the darkest valley, I fear no evil. For you are with me, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord my whole life long. Maybe press pause in just a moment and think, what is it that particularly struck you afresh today as you listened again to me reading that psalm? There were two things that particularly struck me. The first one was in verse 4 when it says, even though I walk through the darkest valley, that word dark. This time of year, of course, we know darkness more than ever in a literal sense because the days are so much shorter in terms of daylight. But you could also say that these last several months have been times of darkness for our world as we've battled COVID-19. I've also found myself reflecting on other times in my life when it's felt as if I would describe it as having been a time of darkness. There was a time, probably 17, 18 years ago now, when I struggled with a bout of depression, and it went on for many months. And I remember describing to somebody that it felt like the dark night of the soul, like I'd been abandoned. There wasn't anything even I could cling on to. There felt like no hope. I found it hard to pray. I found it hard even to believe that God was there. Everything felt like it was in total despair. I wonder what darkness feels like to you. What do you think of if someone was to ask you, what would your times of darkness be? However, as I read that psalm, I'm reminded that even though we all walk at times through the darkest valley, there is that promise that whether we know it or feel it or not, God is with us. It says, I fear no evil, for you are with me. That reminder that it doesn't matter in a sense what our feelings are. It doesn't change the reality that God is still with us. Now, of course, it matters what our feelings are in terms of God, and nobody wants any of us to suffer. But we need to remember to hold on to the truth that God is with us. But then there's one other thing I just want to quickly share too, and that is that verse is in verse 4, which is right in the middle of the psalm. Either side of that verse, which is what's talking about the darkest valley, are promises of hope and abundance and life. So the first three verses talk about God leading us beside still waters, about his green pastures, about him as a shepherd caring for us. And then the last two verses, verses 5 and 6, talk about this abundant banqueting table, which he's preparing for us even now. And what really strikes me about that is that the darkest times are kind of in the middle, but either side, God is still there. He's before us, and he's behind us. He never deserts us. He's in the midst when we're in the midst of the dark. We're not alone, and we can always remember and trust that he does prepare a table for us, that the darkness will not go on forever, although sometimes it really does feel like it. But the promise is that we will know life once more. We will dwell in the house of the Lord and know his love, his life, his light, his abundance, and his healing. What I can't tell you is when we will know that. But the promise is there, and I encourage you in your days of darkness, whenever those may come may come upon you, to hold on to the promises that God goes before and behind you and is preparing, even in the midst of it all, a life of abundance and life. God bless you.